Hi everyone, this is Broken Angel, and welcome to week 7 of Mark Renee's one-year plan to learn to draw. In this video, I focus on increasing my drawing speed while maintaining or improving line accuracy and observation, especially under time pressure, and those goals carry directly into this week's work. Like in week 6, I continued practicing gesture drawing, one-point perspective scenes, character line art with a focus on faces, and head construction. With all that in mind, here's how week 7 went. For day 1, I drew Eren Yeager, Armin Arler, and Mikasa Ackerman from Attack on Titan Season 4. I generally started with the bigger shapes and added details afterwards. For Eren, I started too far left, making the jaw inaccurate at first, but I ended up fixing it later. The hair and ear were done well, and the eyes and eyebrows were accurate. The nose was a bit off, but overall the drawing came together nicely. For Armin, I placed the head too high and left, making the right cheek look off. The bangs were too narrow, so the final section looked wide, but overall it was okay. The mouth, eyes, eyebrows, and clothing details were accurate. The main issue was the hair placement, which made the drawing look off. For Mikasa, the beginning of the jaw and ear were done well, though the right side was a bit too sharp, making the face look slightly narrow. Luckily, it wasn't terrible and didn't take away from the drawing. The hair was pretty accurate, with only a few minor mistakes, and the eyes, eyebrows, nose, and mouth all turned out well. I also captured the clothing at the bottom nicely. Overall, it wasn't a great day, but it was still good practice and a solid start to the week. For day 2, I started with 7 2-minute gesture drawings, each with 30 seconds of observation. The exaggerations were still pretty good, and I captured the poses well, even though some of the shapes, especially the lower body, were off. The centers of gravity were accurate to the references, but I need to add more detail and improve accuracy as I get faster. After that, I did 6 head and face constructions. I forgot the neck on the first one, and the cheekbone lines on the first 2. The jaw and chin on the second head were pitched a bit too far forward. A couple of the middle lines were off, but I corrected them as I went. The widths were all somewhat accurate, and I was able to capture more detail this time, including the eyes and some ear details. Going forward, I need to focus on getting the center line right and making sure the jaw angles are consistent. Overall, the gestures were okay, and I did a decent job with the head construction. For day 3, I drew 9 more head and face constructions, and these were a lot better than the ones from day 2. There were still a few mistakes, but most of the drawings were accurate to the references. All of them included the cheekbone lines this time. The side-facing heads were the easiest, while the front-facing ones were the hardest. I made sure the center lines and jaw shapes were correct, and the heads with simpler angles allowed me to add more details, like the eyes and ear structure. I also spent a bit more time figuring out the size of the eyes and adjusted the nose shapes for the references that weren't facing straight on, which helped them match the references more closely. Some cheekbone lines were still a bit off, but most were good. I need to work on increasing my speed so I can include more detail. Overall, I was really happy with the improvement on head construction today. For day 4, I worked on a 1-point perspective scene. I did a pretty good job of keeping the perspective accurate, though some of the longer lines were a bit wobbly. The stairs on the right side of the building ended up looking 2D. On the other hand, I remembered to add contour lines to the poles, and the changes in angle turned out pretty well. I need to work on using lighter construction lines and thickening the visible lines so the drawing feels less cluttered. Keeping the lines straighter will also help. Overall, it wasn't as strong as the previous days, but it was still good practice. For day 5, I started with 7 2-minute gesture drawings, each with a normal amount of observation. They began a bit weak, but improved as I went. Overall, the exaggerations were done well, and the shapes were mostly good, though some proportions were off, like the body width in the first gesture and the arms in the second. I was able to speed up as I went, but I need to get faster so I can add more detail. After that, I drew Lucy Heartfilia and Natsu Dragneel from Fairy Tale's Phantom Lord arc. For Natsu, the head shape was done well, and the hair was mostly accurate. The fringe on the right side of the face should have been pushed farther towards the edge, but the mouth, eyes, and eyebrows were all accurate. My line thickness has improved since the last time I drew him. I added more details as needed, including the scarf and extra lines in the hair. For Lucy, I am very proud with the shape of her face, even if it looks a bit wide. The hair was done well, though the middle bangs should have been slightly longer. The mouth, nose, eyes, and eyebrows all turned out really well. I added more detail than I normally do in the first pass, but it still worked out. I finished with the final touches, the tears and extra hairlines, and they helped bring the drawing together. Overall, the gestures definitely improved, and I was very happy with how the face line art turned out. For day 6, I drew 9 head and face constructions. I had trouble with the first one, and the heads that were facing straight on, but most of the drawings turned out well. I drew them faster than before, and was able to add more details as a result. The noses were mostly accurate to the references, and the eyes were generally the same. A few of them were a bit off, but most were good. The heads at odd angles were a lot better than my previous attempts, which was encouraging. There's still room for improvement, especially with accuracy at faster speeds, but I can feel things starting to click. As I get quicker, I'll be able to include even more detail while keeping the proportions consistent. Overall, I'm getting better, but there's still plenty to work on. For day 7, I started with 7 2-minute gesture drawings. The shapes were off overall, and I generally made the necks too long and the heads too big. I did better when I used ovals for the torso and pelvis, since they help keep the proportions more grounded. Even with the mistakes, it was useful practice. After that, I worked on another 1-point perspective scene. I began with the buildings on the right and decided to draw only what was visible to the reference. I did a decent job keeping the perspective accurate, even though I took some liberties by making the road a bit narrower. Most of the cars turned out pretty well, aside from the one on the opposite side of the road. The scene ended up being a bit basic, but was still solid practice. Overall, it was a good day of drawing, but there's still more work to be done. Overall, this week went pretty well, and I'm happy with my return to drawing. For the Lineart Studies, the first day's drawings were a bit off, but the rest turned out pretty well. My line confidence and accuracy are still holding up. For gesture drawing, my speed and accuracy started to come back, though observation is definitely the area that needs the most work. In my 1-point perspective drawings, I captured the perspective fairly well in each of the scenes. My line quality improved too, even if the longer lines were still a bit rough. For head construction, I was happy with the results. Reviewing the parts of the Loomis head and practicing facial feature placement will help a lot going forward. I was able to add extra details this week, but I can still increase my speed to include even more. My main goal moving into next week is to continue increasing my drawing speed while maintaining or improving line accuracy and observation, especially under time pressure. If you're going through a journey of learning anything, or if you have any tips you'd like to share, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. With that, that's 7 weeks down and 45 to go. I'll see you in week 8.